Yesterday was the darkest day of the year. Actually, that may not be quite true. It would be more accurate to say that it was the shortest day of the year relative to when the sun rose on the eastern horizon and then set in the west. That is, if you could see it. If it were not for the clouds of freezing rain and snow. I think we've all had enough shoveling for the day, haven't we? The southern solstice, as it is called by astronomers and meteorologists, the point at which the sun's most direct rays on the earth relative to its tilt effectively begin their gradual return northward. In other words, it only gets better from here, at least as far as the light is concerned. It has been as dark as it's going to get. That's the good news. The bad news is that the temperature is it hasn't bottomed out yet. Much as we all are pretty much quite aware that this first day of winter marks a still to be completed climactic chapter, this is in fact the first day. It started at 5:17 yesterday, I think. As much as it is the first day of winter, during which we watch the mercury descend, we are perhaps a little more vague about the degree of luminescence as it has changed. We're used to seeing radical shifts when our clocks go back or forward, but the gradual change in light is a little more hidden. When our family lived outside of Vancouver for my first 3 years of ministry, from about November through to March, having been used to Ontario and Alberta a little bit, we got to feel something of a bit of a profound change in the amount of light. The coast, as you know, is well known for its cloud cover and weather appropriate to the coastal rainforest that it is. Perhaps not surprisingly, it can powerfully affect people's moods. In fact, this phenomenon has given birth to what they call seasonal affective disorder, that is SAD. The psychiatric community was originally skeptical about such a possibility, but by the early 1980s they agreed that it is a measurable actual condition related to shifts primarily in seasonal light, giving birth to what was once called winter depression or winter blues. As you might know, some doctors now even prescribe artificially created ultraviolet light to patients to counteract excessive downward dips of mood swings at this time of year. Light. It has always been associated with religion, of course. Even with the opening words of the Bible, God himself uttering the words, "And let there be light," and the narrative response, "And there was light." A potent force in the universe. Without it, we can not only get depressed, but nothing grows, nothing warms up. Crucial processes cease. Life as we know it would stop. Is it any wonder that it shouldn't be associated with a primal force in the universe, one whom the Hebrew and other ancient religions called God? That is the Old Testament, of course, and then there is the promise of the New, as given in the book of John, among whose opening words in reference to the Son of God are, "And in him was life, and that life was the light of all mankind." The light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome. Christmas, of course, is bursting with images born of the use of light, from bright choirs of angels that were to be heard on high to the light of that star that guided the shepherds to the place of Jesus Christ's birth. This is no accident, any more than is the association of light with wisdom and truth, and not being lost, being saved. The literary biblical appeal to light is no accident either. It is at the heart of the Christian message. Now, some might say the so-called pagan, to use a perhaps more a politically incorrect word, a more correct word would be non-religious. Some might say the non-religious had long made use of light in prior eras. In fact, one might suppose that the earliest dwellers on earth, when first they uncovered and eventually harnessed the secret of that bright and powerful flame, they must have been utterly amazed at the incredible power. It is any wonder that most of us, even to this day, feel something almost primordial when it comes to that candle, whether it be here on our Advent wreath or a candle lit on our dinner tables, especially at Christmas, or the candles around the bathtub. I've never done that. We sense, though, something of a connection with a power that is more than we know. Some of you have done that by the sound of it. The famous German theologian and preacher Helmut Thielicke, writing in the darkest years of World War II, addresses the difference between our ideas about light and those associated with Christian belief in a sermon entitled "The Message of Redeeming Light." He said, "If we are to construe in general terms our image of God, opening heaven and causing his light to shine on the earth, I may well be asked where this light is when the nations are at war." Keep in mind he's speaking in World War II here. Does it shine on iron cages or on deserts which were once fertile fields? It is here that we see the difference between the Christmas message of light and our human ideas. We have to grasp the unusual and difficult thought that all heaven is indeed open, that all the fullness of the light of eternity streams down, that all the angels and heavenly choirs are assembled at this point of eruption, that they permeate the heavenly radiance with their song of praise, and yet this incursion of eternity, which fulfills all hope and longing, is concentrated at a single point, namely where the child lies in a crib, where the love of God is so big that it gives itself in what is smallest, where the eternity of God is so mighty that it enters a feeble and despised body, a heavenly light that intrudes on even the cloudiest, darkest days of our existence. What do they say? Good things come in small packages. Actually, amazing things can come in incredibly small packages. Just ask a quantum physicist, those guys who have been grappling with the so-called God particle. Even if we hark back to the tiniest of flames in history, ask your average camper who struggled to get the campfire going on an otherwise cold, dark night. Are they not on something of the same level at that point as their Neanderthal predecessor? In the gloomiest clouds and even deepest caves of life are to be penetrated by such a spark as tiny as this. It is no accident that the philosophical Socrates was to descend into a dark cave equipped with the light of wisdom. The cave of Christ's tomb was to be illuminated by more than philosophical ideas, but by an eternal flame that was to render even the power of death itself as nothing. Light, the symbol of truth, as the American poet James Russell Lowell called it. This isn't a problem of physics or the truth about the material world. It is an issue that concerns the religious and spiritual realm of life, an aspect of our existence that is no less and perhaps more important than we know. But to once again borrow the physical analogy for another moment, you've heard it said, wherever there is smoke, there is fire. Well, where there is hope, there can be the reality of a light in life that is nothing less than love divine. This time last year, I was driving home when I saw a very distressed man at the side of the road, and he had been running along the side of the road in bare feet. It was absolutely frigid out, and he was obviously, his feet were bleeding. No socks or shoes were to be seen. I did a quick U-turn and stopped to help together with another very kind lady. Together we tried to help him. She gave him a coat from her car. I spoke to him about how, as bad as he was telling me life was, it was going to get better. And I told him this 3 times. He was obviously in a very, very dark place. But indeed, there is no low that is so low that God is not lower. By the time I had said my piece, this fellow's father had come on the scene, and soon after they went off with emergency crews that had been called by a passing motorist with a cell phone. I didn't say or do anything that 1,000 others couldn't have said or done. At the core of the Christian mission and at the center of what is the best of humanity, though, is our task to lift others from whatever darkness wherein they find themselves, even to seek them out in the caves of this world, and there are many such caves. And there is a lot of lifting to do. In Syria, we understand that there are in excess of 1.5 million people struggling in the midst of a cold winter. There are places where people are victimized. We hear of them in prisons in North Korea. People who are hurt or cannot see a light to the way out. Or we could keep minding our own business and quietly go home out of the inclement weather and the messy struggles of humanity, or we can stop and help and love others as we would want them to love us if it was us. I got a phone call informing me this past week that the fellow I helped had just completed his first year of university and things were going really well. And hiding tears, his father wanted to thank me. We hadn't heard or even seen each other in between these 2 events. As I say, most of us would stop. Indeed, there, but for the grace of God, go us all, at one time or another in our lives, in one circumstance or another. And when, not just at Christmas time, though certainly now as well, we bother to share whatever flame we have within us to lift the spirit of another, how could we not when we can? Who among us could avoid the encounter and go home with a conscience that would be comfortably lived with? But this is not just about making ourselves feel better. It is about the other, as it was for Christ himself, who was born, lived, and died with a purpose that was absolutely flooded with light and life. Our world, our culture tends to forget how much comfort and confidence propels us forward because of this loving Spirit working mysteriously among us. We go forward with confidence, with faith, with hope, with joy, with love, because of him. Incidentally, the man who phoned me to tell me how much better life was for his son didn't have to do that. But he gave me a gift of being stronger to go into the future and further fueled to do unto others as I would have them do unto me. Christian gift-giving really is a two-way street, if it is to be worthy of the title. Otherwise, we are just sending things out into the dark universe. with no assurance or even hope of them reaching a destination. But Christmas is, of course, more than about gifts. It is about how we live, where we take this little flame of life, faith in life, sometimes into rather shadowy places of existence for many. As Tilaka aptly puts it, many have been broken by sorrow, but the mystery of the kingdom of God has come into the depths to seek us, and that light shines in the darkness. Indeed, the warm love of Christ, the bright light of hope born at Christmas time, the joyful elation of knowing something of an ever-present God is not something secret or cryptic to be figured out in some complicated way. It defies being hidden in the shadows, like the spark of an amazing idea, like the realization of amazingly good news even in the midst of the most difficult of realities. It is as close to us when we reach out in search of that light to one another. Thanks be to God for Christmas, a light like no other. Amen. Our offering will now be made.